They didn't whisper. That was the thing that stung the most. They didn't even try to lower their voices. Just sit at the kids' table, Grandma. Adults need space. I heard it clear as crystal, standing 2 steps from the dining room, holding the cornbread I'd baked that morning at 5. I don't think they meant to be cruel. That's what I told myself later. People like that rarely mean to be cruel. They're just so used to you being small, invisible, silent. They forget you can still hear. The table for the adults was set with linen napkins and gold-rimmed plates. Candles flickered low in crystal holders. I could see the bottle of wine I brought, unopened, at the far end near the ham. No one had noticed it. Maybe they thought it belonged to someone else. "Don't give her the stuffing yet, it's salty," my daughter-in-law muttered as I walked into the room. With her blood pressure, I placed the cornbread on the sideboard. Didn't say a word. Just nodded when someone gestured vaguely toward the folding table set up near the back window. 4 bright plastic chairs and 1 high chair. A mismatched tablecloth covered it, stained in one corner. That's where I was expected to sit, with toddlers. "It's warmer back here," someone said behind me. "Closer to the vent." I stood still. I don't know for how long. Long enough for someone to brush past and pat my shoulder like I was a dog that had wandered into the house and needed gentle herding. The high chair was empty. Elliot, the baby, had fallen asleep. I sat, because my knees were tired, not because I agreed. From my seat, I could see my son, Peter, carving the turkey. His wife, Maureen, directing the sides, her voice crisp, efficient. My granddaughter Lily was scrolling her phone. No one looked my way, but they talked. "She'll forget anyway," Maureen said. "She always forgets." "I just don't want to deal with one of her stories right now," Peter added, quieter. They laughed, not loud, just enough. I didn't forget. Not then, not now. The chair was sticky. One of the kids had spilled juice earlier, I suppose. The cup was still there. I looked down at the floor. Crumbs, mashed peas, a sock. I stood up. No one noticed. I walked past the kitchen. The gravy simmered. The sweet potatoes were starting to crust at the edge of the dish. I picked up my coat. It was where I'd left it, hanging on the same hook I always used, near the back door. Shoes on, no rush, no drama. I stepped outside into the cold. The wind wasn't bitter, not yet. It was just sharp enough to make me pull the collar up. I walked to the end of the driveway, then kept going. Didn't look back. Nobody called after me. Nobody followed. They wouldn't even notice I'd gone until dessert. Maybe not even then. The sidewalk felt unfamiliar beneath my shoes. Too flat. Too smooth. Suburban neighborhoods always try so hard to be neat. As if freshly raked lawns and motion sensor lights can hold a family together. I passed 4 houses before I realized I didn't know where I was going, but I kept walking. There was a bus stop at the corner of Hawthorne and 5th. I remembered it from when Peter was little. I used to take that line to my night shifts at the fabric store. That store's long gone now, turned into a smoothie bar with chairs too low and music too loud. But the bench was still there. So I sat. It was just past 5. I had no phone on me. Left it charging on the nightstand in the guest room they never let me use. They always said the mattress was too soft, that it wasn't safe for my back. I knew the real reason. They didn't want me staying too long. I checked the posted schedule. The 6:10 would take me downtown. I had no plan beyond that. Only a purse with a wallet, keys, and some folded bills tucked behind a receipt. Enough for a motel room, I guessed. Maybe dinner. Maybe not. A teenager walked by with earbuds in, eyes down. Didn't even glance my way. That used to bother me, being ignored. Not anymore. Now it felt like a kind of freedom. The bus pulled up with a hiss and a sigh. I climbed aboard, nodding at the driver. He barely looked up. "Downtown," I said. He nodded once. "That's where we're headed." The seats were mostly empty. I chose one by the window and sat with my hands folded neatly in my lap. Across from me, a woman about my age was knitting something blue. She didn't look up either, just kept stitching, as if her needles were the only thing holding her together. The city slid by in quiet pieces. Gas stations, strip malls, shuttered storefronts. I didn't recognize half of it anymore. That felt fitting. I wasn't the same either. It took 27 minutes to reach the center. I got off at Main and Wexler, where the lights always seemed a little brighter, even on holidays. The hotel I'd stayed at once, years ago, was still there. The awning had faded, but the lobby smelled the same. Old coffee, carpet shampoo, and something like lemon. I walked up to the front desk. The clerk glanced up from her screen. Young, polite, tired. "Do you have a reservation?" "No," I said. "Just need a room for the night." She tapped at her keyboard. "Single queen okay?" "Perfect." She slid a form across. I filled it out in my neatest handwriting. Signed my name like it still meant something. Paid in cash. She handed over a key card. "Room 203, she said. "Elevators to your left." The room was small, clean, quiet. One bed, one lamp, one chair. That was enough. I sat on the edge of the mattress and took off my shoes. My feet ached, my back protested. But something in me had gone still. I looked around. No high chairs, no folding tables, no one glancing over their shoulder and whispering about my memory. Just me, and the low hum of a heating unit, and a bag with 3 peppermint candies at the bottom. I ate one slowly, brushed the wrapper smooth, and I whispered to the empty room, "Well, so here we are." I didn't turn on the television. I wasn't in the mood to hear voices, not even scripted ones. The quiet suited me. It always had, though nobody ever believed that. They thought silence meant loneliness. For me, it meant space. And that night, I had it all to myself. The hotel room was too warm, so I cracked the window. A thin slice of November air slipped in, sharp, a little damp. I stood there in my socks, breathing it in. Below, a couple walked by holding hands, their breath fogging in the cold. Somewhere down the block, a siren wailed. City noises. No children shouting. No casserole dishes being scraped. Just the clean, distant hum of strangers living their lives. I undressed slowly, folded my cardigan, hung my coat over the single hook by the door. I hadn't packed a bag, hadn't known I'd need one. So I slept in my undershirt, under the motel blanket that smelled faintly of bleach and fabric softener. It was heavy. I liked that. I lay flat on my back, hands crossed over my stomach like a woman posing for a portrait no one would take, and I didn't cry. Not out of pride. Not out of anger. Simply because the tears had dried up years ago. Sometime between my daughter-in-law's 4th correction of how I poured juice and the time Peter told me, without blinking, that the kids didn't like all my stories. Like memories were clutter. I closed my eyes and listened. No pipes knocking, no footsteps above me, no baby monitor static from down the hall. It was the first full silence I'd had in years. I slept. No dreams. No interruptions. When I woke, it was still dark outside. I checked the clock. 6:12 a.m. Old habits, I guess. I'd been rising before sunrise since I was 22. No reason to stop now. I made coffee using the little in-room machine. It tasted like cardboard and burnt filters. But it was hot. I held the cup with both hands and sat on the edge of the bed, looking out through the cracked window. The city was just beginning to stir. A garbage truck rumbled by. The bakery across the street switched on its sign. Fresh daily? I liked that. A promise, simple and small. I could have checked my phone, if I had it. Could have called a cab. Could have packed up and walked straight back to that house and knocked, just to see if they'd open the door. But I didn't want to. They hadn't called me, hadn't texted. Not even Lily, who used to draw me pictures with gluey macaroni and call me my shiny grandma. No one had asked where I'd gone. That, more than anything, told me all I needed to know. I finished my coffee, rinsed the cup, wiped the counter with a paper towel. Some habits don't break. I got dressed. Smoothed the wrinkles from my skirt, rebuttoned my cardigan. I tucked the hotel key card into my purse. I didn't have to leave until 11, but I was ready now. Outside, the air bit a little sharper than the night before, but I welcomed it. It felt honest. I walked without rushing, past shuttered storefronts, past a man with a dog in a red coat. I nodded to him. He nodded back. That was enough. On the corner, a newspaper box displayed the date. Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. In that whole city, I had nowhere to be. And for the first time in decades, that didn't scare me. It steadied me. I kept walking. The diner was small, almost hidden, wedged between a dry cleaner and a pawn shop. The sign above the door said simply, Alice's. No frills, no branding, just a name. That felt like something I could trust. Inside, it smelled of coffee, frying bacon, and old linoleum. The kind of place where the waitresses call you hon and don't bother to write your order down. I liked it immediately. I chose a booth by the window, not because I needed to watch the street, but because the light hit just right. Soft, yellow, forgiving. A woman in her 60s approached, holding a pot of coffee. Her apron was stained, but her hair was neat. She looked like someone who didn't waste time apologizing for small things. Refill? She asked automatically, then squinted. Or are you just starting out? Just starting, I said. She poured. You eaten? I nodded. Something simple, eggs, toast, whatever's hot. You got it. She walked away without another word, and I felt something loosen in my chest. Nobody here knew me. Nobody needed anything from me. Nobody was watching me like I might spill or forget or embarrass them. I stirred sugar into my coffee slowly. One packet, then another. I'd stopped using sugar years ago, but today it felt right. The booth across from me was empty. I didn't spread out. I didn't pretend someone else was coming. The food arrived fast. Scrambled eggs, thick white toast, 3 slices of bacon. Nothing fancy. Everything good. I ate it all, slowly, methodically, like I was proving something to myself. Halfway through the meal, my mind started its usual wander. To birthdays missed, calls not returned, invitations that never came. But I stopped it. Not today. Today, I would finish my meal. I would pay with my own money. I would leave a tip because I wanted to. And I would decide where to go next, not because anyone told me, but because I chose it. When the check came, I counted out cash. No card, no accounts shared with Peter, just crisp bills from my purse, untouched by anyone else's plans. Thanks, hun, the waitress said, scooping up the money. I stood, smoothed my skirt, picked up my coat. Outside, the morning had opened up. The city wasn't beautiful, not in the way travel brochures claim, but it was awake, breathing, real. Buses hissed. Shopkeepers rolled up grates. Someone shouted into a phone near the curb. Life, in all its noisy, imperfect rhythm. I walked toward the park, the one I remembered from years ago. The trees were mostly bare, but the benches were still there, still cold and splintered at the edges. I chose one in the sun. Sat down. Watched a group of children chase each other in circles, their coats flapping like bright flags. I didn't look at a phone. I didn't check messages. I knew there were none. They hadn't called. Not to ask where I was. Not to say they were sorry. Not to say anything. It should have hurt more. But mostly it felt like proof. Proof of something I'd tried to deny for too long, that I'd been fading from their world for years, and they'd just never had the decency to say it out loud. Well, I heard them now, loud and clear. The wind rustled the dry leaves at my feet. I picked one up, crumbled it slowly in my hands. No one knew where I was, and for once, I didn't feel lost. I felt free. The call came just after dusk on the motel's landline. I almost didn't answer. No one had this number, not really. But the clerk had asked when I checked in if she should take messages, and I must have said yes without thinking. Room 203, I said. A pause. Then Peter's voice, tight and cautious. Mom? I closed my eyes. I could hear a TV in the background, kids shouting, Maureen's voice sharp as a knife. I had to call the front desk, he continued. Your phone's off. Lily's worried. She said you disappeared. I didn't speak. I wanted to let the silence stretch. Let him feel what absence actually felt like. Mom, are you all right? I'm fine, I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone older, calmer. Someone finished with pretending. Where are you? Somewhere I chose to be. He sighed, the way he used to when I asked if he was eating enough during college. Look, about yesterday, Maureen didn't mean anything by the kids' table thing. It was just logistics. We had a full house. I know, I said. I saw. There was a long pause. You didn't say goodbye. No, I agreed. I didn't. I heard him shift, maybe walking into another room. He lowered his voice. Lily's really upset. She keeps asking if you're mad at her. Why would I be mad at her? I don't know. She thinks it's her fault. You left before dessert. That stung, but I didn't let it show. Of course they'd lay it at Lily's feet. Make the child carry what was never hers to carry. Tell Lily I love her, I said, and that none of this is about her. Then what is it about? Peter asked. I took a deep breath. It's about how I've spent 20 years shrinking myself to fit a space that gets smaller every year. And yesterday, there just wasn't any space left. Mom, come on. No. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. Just said it. Steady and clear. No, Peter. I'm not coming back. Not tonight. Maybe not for a while. He went quiet again. I pictured him rubbing his forehead like he always did when he was frustrated. But he didn't shout. He didn't beg. I don't understand, he said finally. I know. And then I did something I never used to do. I hung up first. The receiver clicked gently into place, like punctuation at the end of a sentence I'd been writing for years. I stood at the window. Outside, the motel sign buzzed faintly, casting a red tint across the parking lot. A man in a baseball cap smoked by the soda machine. A woman walked her dog in a sweater too small for the cold. I didn't feel heroic or dramatic. I just felt done. And sometimes that's more powerful than anything. The flyer was taped crookedly to the window of the laundromat. Room for rent. Quiet house. Shared kitchen. Must be tidy. No drama. $100 a week. Call June. I stood there for a full minute before pulling out a pen and scribbling the number on the back of an old receipt. My hand shook a little, not from fear, just from the weight of doing something entirely for myself. Back at the motel, I dialed. The line rang twice. Yes? The voice was gravelly, no nonsense. I pictured short gray hair and a house with linoleum floors. I'm calling about the room. Long pause. You smoke? No. You got a cat? No. You loud? I haven't been in years. Good, she said. Come by at 6. Bring the first week's rent in cash. She gave me the address, then hung up. No pleasantries, no fake warmth. I liked her already. The house was on a side street just beyond the bus depot. One story, with faded green siding and a crooked mailbox. A row of wind chimes hung from the porch, tinkling softly in the cold air. I knocked. The woman who opened the door looked exactly how I imagined. Sturdy, round-shouldered, in a sweatshirt that said, "World's okayest cook." She had a cigarette in one hand and a dish towel in the other. "You're the quiet one?" she asked. "I try to be." She stepped aside. "Come in." The smell of fried onions hit me first, then lavender. A strange combination, but not unpleasant. The living room was cluttered in a way that made it feel lived in. Old books, stacks of folded laundry, a sleepy tabby cat stretched across a recliner. The TV was on mute. A crocheted blanket hung neatly on the couch arm. "The room's back here," she said, walking down a narrow hallway. "Shared bath. Kitchen's open. Label your stuff or it's fair game." She opened a door to a small, square space with a twin bed, a dresser, and a window that faced the neighbor's fence. Nothing fancy. But it was clean. It was mine. I handed her the envelope of cash. She didn't count it, just nodded. "You can move in now if you want. Sheets are fresh." "I don't fuss, long as you don't bring trouble." "I won't." We stood in silence for a moment. "You running from something?" she asked, not unkindly. "No," I said. "I think I'm running to something." She looked at me for a long beat, then shrugged. "Well, let me know if you like eggs in the morning. I make too many anyway." I nodded, and she turned to head back down the hall, cat padding behind her. I closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed, ran my hands over the worn blanket. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was in someone else's space. I didn't feel like a burden or a ghost at a feast I wasn't welcome at. The room was quiet. The house was old. And the walls smelled faintly of something roasted and real. I unpacked my coat, laid it carefully over the back of the chair. This wasn't a palace, but it was a beginning. The next morning, June handed me a mug of black coffee and nodded toward the coat rack. "Forecast says sun. Go take a walk. You look like you got too many thoughts to keep inside." She wasn't wrong. I pulled on my jacket, the same one Maureen once called too frumpy for church, and stepped outside. The air smelled like earth and last night's rain. The sidewalk gleamed damp under my feet. I didn't know exactly where I was walking. I only knew I had to move. After 3 blocks, my feet found a rhythm. After 6, they found a memory. I turned onto Ashwood Lane without meaning to, just an old reflex buried deep. The curve of the street, the cracked sidewalk where a maple root buckled the concrete. It was all still there. This was where Peter learned to ride his bike, where he scraped both knees on the same day and I carried him home, all 42 pounds of him, sobbing and hiccuping into my neck. Number 219. Our old house. It looked smaller than I remembered. The porch had been painted beige. The shutters were new. but the mailbox still leaned left, and the tree in the yard still split into 3 perfect branches halfway up. Someone else lived there now. A swing hung from the tree, gently swaying. The porch held a pair of muddy boots and a tricycle. I didn't go closer. Didn't need to. I already knew what I'd find. I sat on the bench across the street, the same one where I used to wait while Peter played with the neighbor boys. My knees ached, but I ignored them. That house had held so many versions of me. The young mother scrubbing crayon from the walls, the widow watching the front steps at dusk, the grandmother reading fairy tales in the same rocking chair James had built before Peter was born. And now? Now I was a stranger to that sidewalk. I didn't feel bitter. I didn't even feel sad. I felt like someone returning to a theater long after the curtain had dropped. The stage was still there. The lights could still come on. But the story was done. I walked back through the neighborhood slowly, letting the morning stretch. At the corner market, I bought a small bag of lemons and a crossword book. The young cashier barely looked up as he rang me out. That, too, felt like a kind of gift. Back at June's, the house smelled like butter and cinnamon. She was sitting in her armchair, the cat curled around her ankles. "Good walk?" she asked. "I saw an old house," I said. "Used to be mine." She didn't ask if I knocked. "You hungry?" "A little." "I made cornbread. It's not sweet, though. I don't like cake pretending to be bread." I smiled. "That's exactly how I like it." She slid me a plate, a square of cornbread still warm with a knob of butter softening into the crust. "I used to cook for 7, I said quietly. "Now I can't remember the last time someone cooked for me." June didn't say anything, just poured more coffee into my mug. That afternoon, I sat by the window in my little rented room, watching the wind move the curtain. No one was texting. No one was calling. There were no grandbabies at the door with sticky fingers and staged hugs. And for the first time, I didn't ache for that. The silence didn't feel like exile anymore. It felt like a clearing, the start of something, a life that belonged to me. I found the notebook by accident. It was wedged at the bottom of my purse, under a tangle of receipts, tissues, and a lipstick I hadn't worn in 5 years. Just a slim, spiral-bound thing with a faded floral cover. Something I'd picked up from the discount rack at a drugstore ages ago. I used to jot shopping lists in it, gift ideas, phone numbers of doctors and roofers. But that morning, after my second cup of June's burnt coffee, I opened it to a blank page and started writing. Not poetry, not a letter, a list. At the top of the page, I wrote what I've given, not out of anger, just curiosity. It began like this: paid Peter's college deposit, $1,000. Co-signed for his first car. Canceled trip to Oregon to watch the grandkids while Maureen had her surgery. Paid for said surgery's out-of-pocket portion. Hosted 8 consecutive Christmases, cooked all meals, never once asked for help. Babysat 3 nights a week for 2 years. Loaned $4,500 for their roof repairs. Never repaid. Bought Lily's braces when their insurance wasn't great. I wrote slowly, methodically, as if I were filling out a tax form, and the list grew. Every page I filled made something inside me settle. Not harden, exactly, but quiet down. I wasn't trying to accuse. I wasn't even angry. I was just accounting, tallying a life of open hands. I flipped to a new page and wrote, what I've asked for. That list was shorter. A place at the grown-up table, a birthday lunch that didn't get canceled last minute. To hold the baby before the neighbor did. A phone call once a week. I stared at the 2 pages. Something about the imbalance wasn't shocking. What shocked me was how long I'd lived with it without even noticing, like a slow leak under the sink. You get used to the smell of mildew, until one day the floor gives out beneath you. I closed the notebook and laid it on the bed beside me. I didn't cry. The crying years were behind me. Instead, I reached for the bank folder I'd brought from home, the one I'd carried in the bottom of my suitcase for years, just in case. In it, my will, the power of attorney Peter had begged me to sign after James died. The statements from the trust I'd built with my name on it and his as co-signer. I'd kept it all tidy, predictable. I took the folder and my purse and walked to the nearest branch of the credit union. It was 3 blocks down from a thrift store and a nail salon called Fancy You. The woman at the desk had braces and a name tag that said Becca. She offered me a warm smile and asked how she could help. "I'd like to change the power of attorney on my accounts," I said calmly, "and remove my son's access." She blinked. "Of course, ma'am. We can help with that." Her fingers tapped at the keyboard. "Do you have a new designee?" "No," I said. "I'd like to keep it with me." She looked up. "You'll need a witness, someone you trust." "I do," I said. "I trust myself." Becca smiled hesitantly and slid a form across the desk. "Sign here then, and here." "One more on this page." I signed. It took 15 minutes. 15 minutes to unhook myself from years of financial babysitting. 15 minutes to say, I am not a purse that walks. I am not an ATM in orthopedic shoes. When I walked out of the bank, my wallet felt no lighter. But I did. The sun had shifted. It was high overhead now, turning the sidewalk gold. I walked to the thrift store and bought a scarf in a shade of green I'd never worn. The tag said $2.50. I paid in cash. At home, June was watching a crime show with the volume low. "Good day?" she asked without looking up. "Actually, yes." She patted the couch beside her. "I made tuna salad. Help yourself if you're hungry." I sat, not because I needed food, but because someone had offered without condition, without expectations. Just a simple thing, freely given. And for the first time, I realized how rare that had become. My name was off the accounts. My money was mine again. And the next time someone asked what I could give, I'd ask them to check their own list first. The office smelled like old paper and lemon-scented floor polish. A little too cold, a little too quiet. The receptionist offered me water, but I declined. I wasn't there to get comfortable. I was there to make sure I was no one's backup plan ever again. The door opened, and a woman in her 50s stepped out. Gray suit, tight bun, no-nonsense eyes. "Mrs. Harper?" "That's me." "I'm Elaine Mason. Come in." Her office had no family photos, just a clock ticking too loudly and a plant that looked like it was surviving on pure spite. I liked her already. She gestured to a chair. "So, you want to revoke your old power of attorney and update your will?" "Yes," I said. "And I want it all airtight. No wiggle room." She nodded and opened a folder. "You listed your son, Peter, as executor and beneficiary of your trust. Do you want to remove him completely?" "I want it rewritten from scratch," I said, my voice even. "He doesn't need to know what I have, and he doesn't need to count on it." Elaine paused, watching me closely. "Understood. Do you have someone else in mind as executor?" "I'll name one later," I said. "For now, I want it held in my name with all decisions mine alone. If something happens to me, let the court assign a neutral party. I'd rather a stranger handle it than someone who only remembers I exist when they need something." There was a silence. Elaine didn't offer sympathy, just nodded again. Fair enough. We went through the papers, line by line, every clause, every transfer. The trust was still intact, solid, clean. But the way it was written before, Peter would have been able to liquidate most of it within days of my passing. He wouldn't have even had to look anyone in the eye to do it. Now he wouldn't see a cent unless I decided otherwise, and I didn't see myself changing my mind. Elaine pushed a pen toward me. Ready? I signed. My name in blue ink 5 times. My hand didn't tremble once. When it was done, she leaned back. Anything else? I pulled out one more envelope, an old one, yellowed at the corners. Inside was a letter James had written 2 months before his death. It wasn't sentimental, it was practical. He'd written it while going over our finances, right after we found out the cancer had spread. Read this, I said, handing it to her, and tell me if there's anything we forgot back then. She scanned it quickly. Her brow lifted slightly at James's clear, precise notes. Your husband was meticulous. He liked to be ready. Elaine looked up. He also said, in here, that you had a tendency to put others before yourself, sometimes to a fault. I smiled. He was right. She folded the letter gently. Well, it seems you're correcting that now. I stood. I'm trying. On the way out, I stopped by the receptionist's desk. There was a candy bowl. I took one, not because I needed it, but because I could. I walked out of that office lighter than I'd felt in years, not because I'd cut someone off, but because I'd finally stopped being scared of what people would think if I didn't always give. It was nearly noon. The city was wide open, and for once, every decision left to make was mine. They came on a Sunday. I knew they would. After the call to the bank, after the trust revisions, after the power of attorney was dissolved, they would feel it. Not immediately, but soon enough. Peter stood on the porch, Maureen just behind him, her arms folded like a teacher, waiting for a child to apologize. Lily hung back near the curb, eyes darting. She was taller than I remembered, thinner too. But her face still held the round softness of a girl who once braided my hair during long afternoons. June opened the door before I could. They say they're your family, she muttered. But I figured I'd ask. I stepped up behind her. It's fine, June. I'll handle it. You want me to stay close? I'm not that old yet, I said quietly. She gave me a sideways grin and wandered back into the kitchen, the cat following. Peter's voice was the first to break the air. Mom, what are you doing here? Living. He looked around like the walls might answer for me. Why didn't you tell anyone? I did, I said. You just weren't listening. Maureen scoffed softly. We've been worried sick. We thought something had happened to you. I left my phone at your house, I said. If you really wanted to reach me, you would have. Peter stepped forward. Lily's been upset. She thought you ran away because of her. I turned to my granddaughter. Her eyes were wide, searching. Oh, Lily, I said gently. I didn't leave because of you. I left because of the silence around me, even when I was in the same room with everyone. You don't need to carry that. She nodded, slowly, tears threatening, but she blinked them back. Maureen shifted. Look, I know things have been tense, but maybe we can sit down, talk like a family. Come back for dinner. The kids miss you. Dinner? I repeated, quiet and measured. Back at the house where I wasn't worth one adult chair? Peter flinched. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, I said. And that was just the surface. He looked away. Maureen jumped in. We're trying to make things right. Are you? I asked. Or are you just afraid now that you don't have access to what you once did? Peter stiffened. That's not fair. What's not fair, I said slowly, is years of giving without acknowledgement. What's not fair is loaning thousands with nothing but vague promises. What's not fair is realizing your child sees you as a resource instead of a person. I know exactly what you did and what you didn't. Like invite me. Like speak to me unless it served you. Like make space for me that wasn't in the margins. Lily stepped forward, small and shaking. Grandma, can I still call you? I looked into her eyes and saw something honest there. Something I'd nearly stopped believing existed in that house. Of course, I said. Anytime. You're always welcome. Her lip trembled. Even if they aren't? That's up to you, I said. But my door opens only for people who see me. Peter cleared his throat. So, that's it? You're just done? I didn't hesitate. Yes. I said it not as punishment, not as vengeance. Just as a boundary. A complete sentence. Peter's shoulders sagged like someone had cut his strings. Maureen opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. We've said enough. I've lived enough of this chapter. I stepped back, reached for the door. Lily looked back once as Maureen gently guided her toward the car. I nodded. The door closed softly. Inside, June was drying dishes. She didn't ask how it went. She just set out 2 mugs and filled them with tea. You said it? She asked. I did. And? It felt like telling the truth out loud for the first time in years. She passed me a sugar cube. Well, then let that be the last lie you ever live. I dropped it into the tea, let it dissolve. No one else came to the house that week, and I didn't wait for them to. I hadn't meant to open the top drawer of the nightstand, not for anything more than an extra pen, but my hand brushed something soft. A folded linen envelope, yellowed at the corners. I recognized James's handwriting immediately. It was dated 2 months before he passed. No stamp, just my name in the center, written the way only he ever wrote it, plain, steady, no frills. Marilyn. I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, the envelope in my lap. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that holds its breath. June had gone out to buy sugar. The cat had disappeared into the closet. I was alone in the best way. No one waiting on me. No one watching. I opened the envelope and unfolded the pages. His handwriting was neat, but fading. A little shakier than I remembered. My girl. If you're reading this, it means you're still sorting through the mess of things I've left behind. Sorry about that. I tried to keep things simple, but you know how life likes to leave drawers full of junk. I've been thinking about the years ahead, the ones I won't see. And there's something I need you to hear, from me and no one else. You give too much. Not in the ways people praise, not in casseroles or birthday cards or warm hugs, though you give all of those too. You give by erasing yourself. You step out of the photo so someone else can fit. You eat last. You sit quietly while others take credit for things you did. You hand over your piece just to keep everyone else comfortable. I've watched you do it for years, and I let you. But now I'm asking you not to. Not anymore. Don't spend your last decades being tolerated, sweetheart. Be where you are wanted. Don't hand over the wheel of your life just because someone tells you they know the road better. You've lived too long and learned too much to be a passenger. And if Peter forgets that, or Maureen pretends not to notice you, let them. Some people only learn from the space you leave behind. I loved you for your gentleness, but I love you more for your fire. Let them feel the burn. James. I read the letter 3 times. The third time, I didn't cry. I just folded it again, as neatly as I could, and slid it back into the envelope. My fingers smoothed the crease like muscle memory. I didn't need the letter to tell me I was right to walk away, but it helped. Sometimes, the only thing keeping us stuck is the voice we miss the most, not saying what we need to hear. Well, I heard it now. I stood and tucked the envelope into the inside pocket of my coat. The good coat, the one with real buttons and deep pockets. It belonged next to my heart. Outside, the sky was soft with evening. The wind was low. In the distance, someone was playing a piano behind an open window. A few notes at a time. Hesitant. Beautiful. I wasn't just moving on anymore. I was reclaiming. Not with noise, not with vengeance, but with the calm, unshakable certainty that I did not exist to make others more comfortable. I existed for something more. And for the first time in a long time, I intended to find out what that was. June brought home a flyer from the library, folded twice and smudged with something that looked like egg yolk. "Thought of you," she said, handing it over with her usual shrug. "They need volunteers." I unfolded it and read, "Local library seeks reading helpers. No experience necessary, just patience and a steady voice." "They're looking for someone to read aloud to the after-school group," she added, lighting a cigarette. "Kids whose folks are working late. You've got the voice for it, calm, like a Sunday coat." I wasn't sure what that meant, but I said I'd think about it. The next morning, I walked there. The building was small, square, and smelled like worn carpet and old books. My favorite kind of perfume. A sign near the entrance read, "Welcome home, readers." I smiled before I even stepped inside. A young woman with thick glasses greeted me. "Can I help you?" "I'm here about the flyer, the reading program." She perked up. "Oh, you're the first to respond. We've had it up for 2 weeks." I filled out a short form, gave them my ID, and sat through a 10-minute orientation. I didn't need much instruction. I knew how to talk to children. I knew how to listen even better. My first session was the following Tuesday. 4 kids sat cross-legged in front of me, their coats still damp from the cold. One boy picked at a hole in his sock. A girl with braids clutched a dog-eared picture book like it was treasure. "Can I read this one?" she asked, holding it up before I'd even said hello. I nodded. "Let's start with yours." By the end of the hour, the group had doubled. 2 more had wandered in. One fell asleep against the bookshelf. Another curled up beside my chair and listened so hard he forgot to fidget. I walked home with a warmth in my chest I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't pride. It wasn't even joy. It was relevance. The next week, I brought cookies. By the 3rd week, the library had given me a little corner near the window with my own bin of books and a sign that read, "Story time with Miss Marilyn." "Miss," I'd said, raising an eyebrow when they showed it to me. The librarian had shrugged. "Felt better than Ms. or Mrs. Don't you like it?" I looked at the bold black letters. It wasn't about marital status. It was about being addressed on your own terms. I like it just fine. Some days, I'd stay after to shelve books, help tape spines, or organize the donation cart. Other volunteers came and went, mostly students or retirees. But I became part of the scenery, the way a familiar lamp doesn't need to prove itself anymore. One afternoon, I caught my reflection in the library's glass door. My hair was pinned back, wisps silvering at the edges. I was wearing a scarf I'd bought for no one's approval but my own. My eyes looked clear, and for the first time in a very long time I thought, I would have liked this woman, not tolerated her, not pitied her, liked her. There's a special kind of dignity in choosing work that no one asked you to do, not out of obligation, not for applause, but because it fits the shape of your soul. For decades, my time had been consumed by what others needed. Meals made, money loaned, favors granted, feelings soothed. Now, in that little reading corner with its plastic chairs and sticky crayons, I was building something gentler. Something mine. No one asked about my estate plan. No one sighed when I got up slowly. No one called me just Grandma. I was Miss Marilyn, reader, tea bringer, keeper of silence. And every child who crawled into that corner, coat and all, and curled up beside me with a book, they weren't asking for anything more than presence. That I could give freely. That I wanted to. And the difference was everything. June's house smelled like garlic and something roasting. She'd been banging around in the kitchen all afternoon, radio playing low, cat weaving between her legs like a shadow with fur. "You're joining us tonight," she said. Not a question, not a request, a fact. I blinked at her from the hallway. "Who's us?" "My sister Lou's in town. Her girlfriend brought wine. I made lamb. You're sitting at the head of the table because you've got the best back and the worst knees. Come on." I almost laughed. It had been years since anyone told me where to sit that didn't involve folding chairs and plastic forks. The table was set simply. Mismatched plates, a tablecloth with one burnt corner, cloth napkins that didn't match either. But there was a candle flickering in a jelly jar, and the food smelled like something worth lingering over. Lou arrived 10 minutes later, carrying a tote bag full of pie tins. Her girlfriend, Carla, was all jokes and flannel shirts and wide gestures. They talked fast, laughed louder, and didn't ask me a single polite question like, "What do you do all day?" or "Do you have grandkids?" Instead, Carla said, "June tells me you used to run some kind of business." I nodded. "Dry cleaning? 3 locations at one point." She whistled. "Damn, that's serious. I can't even keep succulents alive." And that was that. No forced compliments, no awkward silences. We ate lamb with roasted potatoes and something green I couldn't name. There was wine, and then more wine, and eventually pie. Real pie. With a crust that flaked and filling that didn't taste like syrup. Lou claimed it came from an old recipe she found in her ex-husband's mother's Bible. We talked about politics and bad knees and the worst outfits we ever wore in public. I told them about a pink hat I wore for an entire winter, just because James once said it made me look less tired. They laughed. Not at me. With me. I sat at the head of the table, as promised. My knees were grateful. My back appreciated the cushion. But it wasn't the chair that mattered. It was the fact that no one tried to shrink me. No one cut me off. No one looked past me. When the laughter died down and Lou started boxing up leftovers, Carla poured the last half glass of wine and looked over at me. "You always this quiet?" she asked. I shook my head. Just this rested. That got another round of chuckles. Later, after the dishes were done and the house had gone quiet again, June handed me a leftover container and muttered, "Don't act like you didn't enjoy that." "I won't," I said. And I didn't. Because I had. Fully. Without guilt. Without playing hostess or worrying if someone needed more ice or if Peter was going to make another excuse for why the kids just weren't in the mood to talk. No one needed anything from me that night except my presence. And I gave it, gladly. That's the thing they never tell you when you're young. That sometimes the deepest loneliness doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being in a room full of people and feeling like furniture. That night, I wasn't furniture. I was company. And it tasted like lamb and laughter and freedom. The phone rang on the 23rd of December. Not the motel's landline, not the library's front desk. My own new number. The one I'd gotten 2 weeks ago after June marched me into the mobile store and said, "She needs something modern that doesn't weigh 5 pounds or come with shame." It buzzed once, then twice. Peter. I let it ring. I was sitting by the window, the new scarf around my neck, a cup of weak tea cooling in my hands. Outside, the sidewalk sparkled with frost. A string of lights blinked lazily on the porch across the street. It had snowed that morning, just enough to hush things. The kind of snow that says, "Stay in, be still." The phone stopped, then buzzed again. Voicemail. June glanced up from the couch where she was assembling some kind of impossible puzzle of birds. "You gonna call him back?" "No," I said simply. She nodded. "Good." The voicemail dinged, but I didn't open it. I didn't need to hear it to know the shape of it. Apologies dipped in guilt. A careful mention of Lily. A half-hearted invitation to Christmas dinner. "We're making it smaller this year, just the core family. We've been thinking about you. Lily would love to see you. We miss you." "Miss what, exactly? The empty chair I filled? The check that covered the shortfall? The woman who always said yes? I'd spent so many years saying yes before I even knew what I wanted. Before I even considered the possibility of saying no. Because I thought that's what mothers did. What grandmothers were for. But I knew better now. That call wasn't for me. It was for the version of me they hoped still existed. The pliable one. The one who would brush aside months of silence and disrespect just because a tree went up in the living room. The version who would bring pie and sit quietly while they forgot to pour her wine. I stood up, poured the cold tea into the sink, and started a fresh kettle. June glanced at the phone on the table. "You want me to block the number?" "Not yet," I said. "Let it ring a few more times." "You sure?" "Yes," I said. "I want to know I'm not needed. I want to know they're still trying." "But I don't need to hear it." The kettle hissed, and I made a new cup. This time with sugar. 2 spoons. That night, I didn't think about what they were doing, whether the tree was up, whether Maureen had finally learned to make stuffing that wasn't gluey. I thought about the children at the library, the ones who leaned their heads on my knee when the book got soft in the middle. I thought about Carla and Lou and June, laughing so hard at dinner they nearly cried. I thought about the letter from James in my coat pocket, folded carefully, its edges worn with rereading, and I let the phone ring. Not to punish, not to make a point, but because silence, the kind I chose, was sweeter than any hollow invitation. I sat at the table alone that night, my dinner simple. Lentil soup and a slice of June's bread. I lit a single candle, not for show, but because the flicker made the room feel warm. There were no gifts under a tree. There was no tree, just me. And I was not lonely. I was present. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. New Year's Eve arrived without glitter, without plans, without anyone asking what I'd be wearing or bringing. And still, it felt like a celebration. I woke early. The library was closed, and June had driven off to visit her niece 2 towns over, leaving a note on the fridge. "There's chili in the pot. Cat's been fed. You know where the wine is. Don't wait up." So I didn't. I spent the morning rearranging the furniture in my little room, not because it needed it, but because I did. I moved the bed to face the window, shifted the chair to catch the light. I took the scarf Carla gave me and draped it over the lampshade. Just enough green to warm the walls. It wasn't much, but it was mine. By noon, I'd started writing again. Not lists this time. Not ledgers of what was given and not returned. Just small thoughts in the margins of that old notebook. Phrases I liked. Sentences I hadn't said aloud. At 4, I lit a candle. At 5, I made a plate. 2 slices of bread, a bowl of chili, 1 square of dark chocolate, and a small glass of red wine. Not a feast, not a toast. Just a meal. Simple, quiet, mine. I set the table properly. Napkin, fork, the good bowl June lets me borrow now without asking. I sat at the chair with the cushion, the one that creaks a little, and I ate. No one rushed me. No one talked over me. No one asked me to move for a photo. Just the sound of the fork against the bowl and the soft clink of glass against wood. After dinner, I stepped outside. The wind had settled, and the air was crisp, full of that deep stillness only winter gives. The neighborhood was quiet. No parties spilling out onto lawns, no music vibrating from car windows. Just a dog barking in the distance, and the soft crunch of snow beneath my boots as I walked to the sidewalk. I didn't go far, just enough to feel the night. At the corner, a couple passed me, holding hands and sharing a scarf. They smiled. I smiled back. No one flinched, no one hurried. Back home, I made tea. Chamomile, the kind I used to drink in secret, because Maureen once said it made the whole house smell like an old drawer. Now I let it steep as long as I wanted, let it fill every room. The cat jumped up beside me on the couch. I didn't pet her. She didn't ask. At 11:58, I didn't count down. I didn't watch a ball drop. I didn't make resolutions. I just sat with the tea warm in my hands and thought about the woman I'd become. Not out of rebellion, not out of bitterness, but from finally turning toward myself. For so long, I'd been a supporting character in other people's stories. The one who smoothed things, softened blows, filled in where others had left gaps. But not anymore. Now I was the voice that didn't get talked over. The name no longer used only when something needed fixing. The place that didn't empty itself out just to be welcome. When midnight came, it did so gently. No fanfare. Just the quiet tick of a clock and the certainty of breath. And I whispered, not loudly, not for anyone else, just for me. Happy New Year, Marilyn. No one toasted me. No one texted. And I didn't mind, because I was already full, not with wine, not with food, but with myself. And for the first time in a lifetime, that was enough.